The first big risk you ever took in your career?
Was basically a decision to move away from home. I really wanted to pursue my passion. It was only like 2 years into basketball, but I could feel like it was going well.
Exited 3 businesses, you founded 2. For people who don't know Fetcher, what was it?
It was e-commerce logistics. Half the world doesn't have addresses. You go to India, Pakistan, here, you can see how much of a mess it is. And when you buy something online, you're still being asked about what's your address. Instead of relying on address systems that are irrelevant, we're just relying on GPS. So you could receive your packages at the beach, for example.
What happened after Fetcher? You then joined a company as a senior exec?
I was tired of being a CEO. I was burned out. I joined as chief strategy, and then I took over technology and then data.
And at what point in your journey did you have the experience of raising money for the first time?
To raise my first million, 1.2 million.
How hard was the first time?
Horrible. First time founder. How come you think you can disrupt the big guys?
Hello, I'm Kieran O'Connor and welcome back to the Calculated Risk podcast. This is episode 9 and I am joined by French entrepreneur Idriss Rifai. He is based here in the UAE. He started his career as a professional basketballer, then moved on to the special forces and then eventually built and sold 3 companies, and he's building all over again here in Dubai. Idriss, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks a lot for having me.
It's worth mentioning, we organised this very, very last minute. We got in contact yesterday and you're leaving Dubai tomorrow.
Exactly.
So we decided why not do it today and hear your great story.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about risk. What is the first big risk you ever took in your career and how did it play out?
So early when I was like a teenager, I got to fall in love with basketball. And I remember I think like the biggest was basically a decision to move away from home, leave home. I was like 14 and something, and whether it was the right decision or not. I think it was the right. I really wanted to pursue my passion. It was only like 2 years into basketball, but I could feel like it was going well. I remember these discussions with my parents saying, if your grades go any lower than that threshold, you come back home. So it was like a deal. It's almost like the first time I felt like an adult, because there was like a contract. We shook hands, and that was great because like the boundaries were clear. And then starting there, I was like playing 5-6 times a week. So yeah, that's my first real bet actually.
So for context, you were in France.
Yeah.
As a younger child, and where did you have to move to for basketball?
It was about 200 kilometers away. It was Toulouse, so southwest of France. I'm come from a place that is like a bit remote, like the mountains of France, and there was not like any kind of professional structure that could help me grow. So it was the question whether I wanted to be the big fish in a small pond or the tiny fish in a larger pond, and I chose the latter.
That's a very big risk for such early on. And you played professionally for your country? You played for France?
After that. Yeah. After that, I played for the national team, and then I played professional for Paris for a few years while doing my studies. So it was a bit of a challenge, going on buses and with your constitutional law books in the back of the bus. That was a bit weird. And it was what we call hopes. So it's basically like, so every professional team has to have an under 21 team. So I was very good for the under 21 and very shit for the professional. So it was, it gets you humble because you realize that, again, the same problem you can choose to be a big fish in a small pond or choosing to find better players and realize that you're not that good. And when you're 18, 19, you play with grown adults, it's a different story. I got pushed a lot. So yeah.
Well, I remember my time as well, because I just mentioned to you, I played Welsh League football, which is classed as semi-professional football. It's not as big as the English leagues. But when I was 18 to 20, I was playing with fully grown adults. And I guess I had more energy and more enthusiasm and more commitment to the sport, like I'm sure you did. What was the point where you decided, maybe basketball isn't going to be my career? How was that?
It's more like basketball decided for me, to be honest. Like, it was really my passion. I really wanted to do it. When I realized that I'll reach my maximum potential, and that was not enough for me. It's all about opportunity cost and understanding so either you maximize and you kind of like milk that position to the point where you're being basically not renewed or your contract is expiring. The average for an NBA player, the average career is like 4.7 years. So it's tiny. And you could, I think like NFL is like 3 years or something. So careers are very short-lived in any case. So when we call, so obviously like we all remember like the Michael Jordan and so on that plays in their 40s, but there are really exceptions. The norm is really like 3-4 years career. The average EuroLeague careers is 5 years. It's just very, very short-lived. So there, like the point where you have to give up is gonna come. And for me, it was at the like I only played professional for like 2 years, and like I said, I was not even a starter. I realized that I would not even bet on myself, and that's where a little bit it shifts because you realize that the people that are playing they're actually better than you.
It's tough to realize that though. It's tough
It
to
is.
accept that.
Yeah, it is. It's tough, but it's the reality, no? Like I think it's almost when you going back to parallels, with startup life, it's almost like when you start a company and you realize that you have to pivot or to shut it down. Like it's just the right thing to do. Even though it's tough, you have to put your ego on the side and just realize that they're just better players. I remember when I played like in this team, like I remember I was not even wanting to play. And this is where it shifts. We're playing in Belgrade, and it was just so noisy, and I realized it's just no, that's it. That's my limits. Like I was like almost like too stressed already. So yeah.
So that first big risk was very early on. So no doubt that has affected your trajectory and your whole life. But Idriss sitting in front of me today, what is your risk tolerance like now?
So I would say that still probably quite high. I realize that when I talk to like normal people that are not entrepreneurs, no more, you see what I mean? Like, because I think as entrepreneurs, you make your tolerance to risk is so high that you tend to think that it's normal. The fact that you don't know whether, in 6 months you're going to have a job or whether you're going to have to pivot in 2 weeks or, it's just like normal. You live day by day. But I still think that I'm a bit less risk prone than what I was a couple of years ago. But still quite high. Yeah, for sure. In my personal life and business. Yeah, for sure.
And a good question that I've had some very different answers from is how you actually go about making those decisions when a risk is in front of you.
Yeah.
For me, I'm pretty quick.
Yeah.
In a matter of hours, not days.
Yeah.
How do you make these decisions?
So I would say two things. One, when we talk about startups, what we think about taking risk is actually very calculated risk in some extent. Which means that there is a way to test products and services when you go to markets that makes it less risky. One of the main problems that entrepreneurs do and commit is more like they want to build the perfect product before it's battle tested to the market. So they're thinking their ivory tower, and we all do that mistakes to some extent. And I remember this quote from like Reid Hoffman, CEO of LinkedIn, founder of LinkedIn, saying like, if you're not ashamed of your first product, you probably launched too late. Which is really true, right? So you have to be ashamed the first time you launch, because if you try to build the perfect product that is in your heads, you might have no product market fit. So I would say that going back to risk and so on, and tolerance to risk, like you need to be very okay on getting to market with an incomplete product and making sure that you can pivot or kill it. Right? In personal life, it's a bit different, right? But in business, this is the way. This is the way to play with risk and go to market and not burning the whole money that you have for the company, right? This is the way to balance it out.
It's very good advice, and I've heard it a lot, and I know a lot of people will. But for some reason, people who are building startups are maybe very technically gifted, and they leave the speaking to the customers and getting feedback till the last minute. Why do you think that is?
I think so. Probably most likely is because we don't want to be told that you're incorrect. I think there is a bit of ego is a big word, but I think there is a bit of nobody wants to be told. When you start the company, you start pitching your idea, right? To your parents, to your friends, to your first customers, for them to be on board. And you kind of fear that moment where you're going to have to be told that what you're building is useless. The way you need to think of business, it's very simple. If anyone wants to think about, in 20 seconds, whether it's a good idea. I've learned that in my MBA, and I thought it was so useful. So I'd love to share that. Is that, do you create value? So basically, does your product or service create any kind of value for anyone that is willing to pay for? because creating value is easy and not everyone is Facebook, right? So you need to get people to pay for what you're building. Then not only can you create value, but can you retain value? It's super critical because here, do you have platform leakage or any kind of problems that arise? Do you have like any kind of stickiness with your competitor? Right, so is your client's gonna switch for you because your competitor is like 1 cent, and then you have like no stickiness, very difficult to build a business that is basically commoditized. And then can you translate this value into shareholder value, which is like another problems, because in a market that is commoditized, and you can see that, for example, like there are tons of examples, like Groupon, for example. Groupon grew, like you remember, Groupon was super hot, 2009. They grew 10x since then, and the valuation is the same. So that's typical of the third phase, is that you create value, you retain value, but now you don't extract value to shareholders. So if you think about these three and then you kind of pass through this test, it means that your idea is not totally shit and you can actually look at it a bit deeper. So I think that's the way, that's like a framework to assess risk.
Before we come on to your ideas, your businesses that you founded and the exits, there was another identity in your life where you finished professional sports, and did you go straight into special forces after that, or was there something in between?
There was something in between, yeah. I for a couple of years I tried to get into the French public service, and it was like, I got in, and it was a bit underwhelming. This is when I realized that this is how I would shoot myself if I were spending like 20 years in that place. So I started learning Arabic, and I was still playing basketball. So it's okay. Like I was doing all right. But long term, it was definitely, I realized that it was not the type of life I wanted. I was already bored at 25. There is a problem. This is when I met a guy, and like a super random. It's not like it was written that my family's in the forces or whatever. Never any interest in the army, but I found this guy that was like recruiting for the special forces, and special forces is a big word, just to think about like missions that you're behind enemy lines or in enemy territory where you don't have any kind of logistic support, and when your life depends only on the group. It's a group of like 6 to 8 people. So like, let's not think that everything is like super dangerous and so on, but it's more autonomy. You need to be extremely autonomous in 6 to 8 people. Like you can, no sleep, no drink, no eats for 1 week or whatever. So like it's very, that's the test. But basically like it's very lonely and autonomous. And I fell in love with this. I really liked it. It was another way to push my body, my mind. It's very intense. And I loved intensity, so I did that for 3 years, and I loved it.
What happened after those 3 years? Why did you decide that wasn't fulfilling you anymore?
It's more like I realized that I was getting a little bit into PTSD territory. Some of the missions were, so we went to Somalia, Congo, Chad, Central African Republic, like Angola, and everything that we saw that was like quite tough. So first we got shot at quite a lot in some countries, which is okay. I didn't lose that many people. But two, it's more like you start shaking a little bit your principle, like philosophical principle. Like it's always, for me, it's more like but it always, when you think about the cost of a life, that people are willing to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars to save somebody in the ops because, he went, off track and now he's getting injured. You realize you can save people for like 20 cents in some places of this world, and people are gonna die because they don't have this 20 cents or access to this 20 cents medication because the medication there is a lot more expensive because of network or whatever, whatever the reasons are. So like, I would say my PTSD a little bit came through that realization that, the world is really not fair in that sense. Like it's just like, so much depends about where you're born and so on. So I was getting a bit too much into this, and I decided I've had enough. 16 missions, 9 black ops. Like it was enough. So I decided to drop off. Yeah.
And thinking back to your professional sporting career, I know for me, it took quite some time to realize what skills I had and brought into business. Yeah. Now where you are today, and you can think back quite clearly, what skills did professional sports give you, which you now use in business to have your success here?
Actually, quite a lot. I feel like there is like 2-3 things. One, definitely discipline. Super important. And whether it's in the forces or entrepreneurship, like you need to be, in my opinion, you need to be very disciplined on the way you approach the business. It's really a marathon, not a sprint. And entrepreneurs, and especially first-time entrepreneurs, they tend to think that as more like a sprint than a marathon. It really is not, because the company can go well and then still shit hit the fan at the very end. So or face a lot of trouble, more like later stage. So it really is a marathon. So discipline is one. I really like the idea of like delayed gratification, which is, so you've been into sport. So, like waking up at 4 a.m. and, like all the stuff that you have to do, hoping that you're going to get 30 seconds of glory at the end of the game. There is a lot of like building the frameworks and building your body and your mind to be ready when it matters, which is a lot about entrepreneurship as well, right? That resilience, that focus needs to be trained. So delayed gratification is key. There was a quote that I read like not too long ago, people will question why you work so hard until you succeed, and then they will question why you got so lucky. It's very true. Like, it's exactly what it is. Like, when you work hard and discipline, everybody thinks about, like, why are you doing this? I remember the story. There was the founder of Shazam that was actually talking to us. Great company, right? Drop up from, I think, Berkeley or whatever, 4, 5, 6 co-founders. Like, I've never seen this, but anyway, that's cool. And 17 years until, so we think it's massive success, right? 14 years into the company, they were making less than $50,000 per month. So for me, it's like, you have to realize that it's just such a long ride. So now imagine you were the partner, the boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever of one of the founder. After 14 years, you still say, okay, hey, maybe it's time to move on, no? And the guy didn't. And then the massive exit, 1 billion, 2 billion. So you see what I mean? Like, there is a lot of like delayed gratification, making sure that you realize that if the payoff comes, it might come super late. And I think it's very similar to sport.
Those are two very good ones. And I mentioned that I did a podcast recently where I was the guest and I was speaking about what I thought I've brought from sport into business. And I was trying to think outside the box, because the ones that are common are like mindset and mentality, which are all very valid.
Yeah.
And you know what I realized? Diet. My diet from playing football to a good level had to be consistent and clean. I had to eat well for energy. And I've never lost that. And I've never lost that. Do you think you've had that as well? Have you stayed consistent?
Yeah, for sure. But you have two elements, right? You have one, purely the diet to make sure that your energy is up, right? To make sure that you can actually, stomach like the travels and the pressure, right? But then two, the consistency, which is that element that is super, super important. Yeah, super important in startups, super important in sport. One of my friends is like professional runner. It's just like, it does not drink a drop of alcohol, during the season, during the 9 months of the season. Discipline, yeah.
So you've taken those skills from professional sport, right? Now you soon entered the special forces, and you've definitely taken a whole new set of principles or mindset shifts, which have you probably still use today. So what did you learn from the special forces?
Quite a lot. I would say the two things that come in mind is the power of small teams. I love this concept, but it's very true, right? So special forces is the opposite of infantry. When people think about the army, they think about, the movies and, whatever movies you've seen and the crazy discipline that you need to have in the infantry, because it's a numbers game. Infantry is like one boss, 100 people under them, and therefore you need to have like very strong discipline. And it's bottom up a lot more, top down rather than bottom up. Special forces is the opposite. Like, we're a group of like 6 to 7 people, multiple nationalities. We have one common mission, but they have like different side mission or agenda on the mission. So, and then you're heading this mission because you're the only officer, and you need to make it work. So there is this concept that I love about, the obligations of means versus obligations of results, right? It's like Machiavelli and this philosopher. I love it. It's been misunderstood a lot, but I think there is a key component where, going back to the parallel between special forces and entrepreneurship, that is a lot about obligations of results. Like, nobody cares about how hard you work, really. What matters is going to be the results. If you want to build your legacy and your success, like, it's very unfair, but it's also the reality that nobody will remember how tough it was. What matters is the results. And it's only when you got the results that they care about the story. And it's never the opposite. So we can see that it's result driven. So there is a lot of obligations of results and the power of small teams. And I would say the second one probably is the ability to extract the best of the team member. Because basically in the special forces, like all my guys were more qualified than me, and I was still the one making calls, which is quite weird. But in startup, it's fairly the same, right? You're the CEO, like, and I'm always the most stupid guy around the room, right? Like, it's just, you need to surround yourself with people that are better than you in their field, but they're just better. When it's about making decisions on the field, they're better. There is this quote, like, you hire great talents not to tell them what to do, right? Like, you let them do. So there is a lot of that. You need this mix between leading and letting it go. Is very similar to startup, right? You need to let it go on your talents. Otherwise, they're going to be frustrated. They're going to leave and so on, especially early stage. Later stage is a bit different, right? Obviously, but yeah, very similar.
Would you say it's very, very hard to learn to let go and delegate in the beginning?
For me, no.
You easy?
No, because, so for me, I learned it when I was in the special forces, and honestly, I was so unqualified to be in the places I had, and the guys were better. I'm like, yeah, no, it's just like make decisions. So no, it didn't feel like a problem. No. Because I think you need to be very humble and you need to realize that you only have one perspective, right? And therefore, like listening to others is super key.
Well, it's no surprise you've stepped into entrepreneurship and had some success with those skills from professional sport and then those skills and mindset shifts from the special forces. So what happened after the special forces? Did you go straight into starting a company or were you an employee?
I was an employee, yeah. I went back to, I was advising the Minister of Defense. Her name was Michel Alliot-Marie back in the days. So it was a special situation center type of thing. So I was advising her on what to do in some of these markets, some of these countries. So it was fun, 2 years, super intense. That was like very, because obviously here you're working at the minister pace, right? So she was having 10-minute meeting and then 30 seconds, to brief her for our next meeting. So it was like super intense. But yeah, it was really, really fun. It was really fun. I did that and then yeah, I met one of the guys that actually got me into doing an MBA. And I had no clue what it was. I researched and I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool. I studied for, I'm not one of these guys that were overnight success over weekends, but no, I had to work for like a full year, improve my English, improve my quantitative skills and all that stuff. And just to try to get into a good MBA. So yeah, I went through that step too.
And what age did you leave Special Forces?
26.
And at what point did you end up in Dubai?
So yeah, 26 Special Forces, 26 then 26 to 28, I was the advisor. 28 to 30, I did my MBA. 30, I went to Dubai.
Mm-hmm. And now you permanently reside here? Is this where you're?
Yeah, this is my base, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So let's get into the business side of things, okay? So you mentioned off-cam, you have exited 3 businesses. You founded 2 and you were a senior executive at one. You're now building again. I love it. Let's go back to the first one. What was the business? It
was like a 2009. It was like a Groupon type of idea. I don't know if you remember. It's crazy because it was so hot and it was only like 15 years ago. And now it feels like nobody cares really about Groupon, which I understand. But anyway, so yeah, it was Groupon and Living Social. You remember? There was a lot of competition in the US about who's going to win. And we basically built another Groupon and hoping that one of the competitors will buy us. So we really bought it to be bought. We didn't build to exist or to compete, right? We literally built it for that. So yeah, it was interesting. A lot of mistakes at the very beginning, liquidation preference and so on. But it was good. It was a good learning. During the MBA and, so you don't burn yourself too much. It was fun.
Everyone's got ideas, right? Where did you come up with the idea? I'm sure you had lots of ideas, but how did you realize that idea was the one that was actually going to be successful? Well, you bet yourself on that idea. How do you do it?
It was like 2-3 things, I think. So one, he always marked me timing. We always tend to think about, business ideas in a vacuum, while timing is so important. You remember there was the MySpace and a lot of these companies were avant-garde pretty much, right? And because they got started too early, like they didn't meet market demands, right? So there was always I remember, I love that quote, like being right too early is the same thing as being wrong. And it's super true for startups, and the timing is super critical. So we felt the timing was perfect, right, for this, because super hyped. Both competitors were crazy valuations. So if you see markets that are like this and you try to build one feature that could be replicated on the platform and give an edge, hopefully, to one of the platform, great timing. You're gonna be bought out. So we felt like it was good timing. So that's one. Two, it felt like the right team. I had like two other co-founders. They were technical. I was not. So, and great people. We got along. Super key. Always. I mean, if you're thinking about your first like C team or when you start a business, it's super critical to get along. I will values before skills, like any day. So yeah, great people, great values. I mean, we're matching here. So yeah, that's the two things that really mattered.
And how long did it take before you started the business to where you successfully exited?
Yeah, super short, like less than 6 months.
Wow,
yeah,
that's very quick.
Yeah, but it was not a great exit either, right? So you don't build $1 billion business in 6 months. But it was great because it's just like I think like, so for me, I don't know if everyone is the case for everyone, but for me, there was like a bit of always this like this feeling that, startups that are successful must be so good inside, right? For them to be successful. And you realize it's such a shit show. All right. So you don't need to be good at everything to build a successful business. You need to be good at one thing and not too much shit on the other. Right. So especially early stage, obviously later it's a bit different. But so yeah, it was a bit of a moment where just like, wow, you can create value that fast. And for me, like it was, the question about why Google is not building it, when you're an entrepreneur, always you get thrown these like board curves, like how to answer this. Yeah, but then anyway. So yeah, it was very aha moment for me.
Most people start a business to sell it, right? That's the why you start a business. But some people do, some people don't. And you've sold 2 and been part of 3 exits. So what's the difference between how you go about starting a business if your mindset is to build it to sell? How do you structure things from the beginning?
From the beginning, I wouldn't say that there is tons of differences. You need to make sure that you have the building blocks to make sure that your corporate governance and some of this stuff doesn't impede your ability to sell. That's critical. So, class of shares, liquidity preference, all the things that you realize later in the game can be, a big problem, either for late investors, Series B, Series C, pre-IPO, or also like for IPO or selling the business. So where you incorporate your company and so on, it's super critical. For example, the second business, we were in Cayman, and Cayman has been considered now at one point, in the gray list by the European Union. So we moved to BVI, and BVI is on the green list. So like stupid things like this, but that matters. Otherwise, we would have needed another 6 months to move the whole shareholder structure in the other business to make sure that we could get some investments from one of these guys. And in 6 months, everything can happen. They can lose their interest. They can start not being interested with logistics or whatever it is. So you need like being ready at the right time. It requires a lot of prep, again, going back to sports and so on. So yeah, build the right corporate structure, build the right class of shares straight off the beginning, making sure that you can retain control, especially if you're not the first time founder, that you keep control at the board level as long as possible. So some of these things there is a lot of companies that have been destroyed by investors. It really happens, right? Either through the term sheets or the way they behave at the board or so on. So you need to make sure is a big word, but you need to minimize the risk of this to happen.
You may be similar to me. Most of us learn through things when they're hard or challenging or things go wrong. That first company, which lasted 6 months, it sounds like you did everything right. I mean, what did you learn from that experience?
I don't feel like we did everything right. I think we did a couple of things really right. And again, timing was one part, and the product, the fact that we were really laser focused on what we tried to build. Again, a lot of the entrepreneurs make the mistakes of building a product that is too big. Straight off the bat, like focus, right? Focus, like try to, and make sure that what you're selling, create value, capture value, and transform to shareholders' value. So super important. So yeah, I think we did a couple of things right, but we did a lot of mistakes. I mean, a lot of them. And in all my companies, I did mistakes, but it's different kind of mistakes, and they're not as much of a rookie mistakes than what that I did at the beginning.
So you had an exit from this business. Was the mindset, right, I'm building again?
Yeah, so actually, I joined consulting after my MBA. I felt like my background was all over the place and I'm not employable. So, it was a little bit of my own insecurity that, starts picking up. And I was like, okay, I went to BCG, I moved to Dubai. Great exercise, honestly. Like, it taught me a lot on multiple fronts, right? Building the story, building like crafting slides, crafting the story, which is super important. If you think about, selling to an investor, selling to you need to have a very structured and great story, which is what consultants are really good at. So I learned a lot. That was good, but I also didn't see myself, staying for 10 years or more. So yeah, I did that. And then I'm like, okay, let's do it again.
And what was this business? Tell us about the next business you started.
The next business, interestingly enough, it was the e-commerce space. And I built my own logistics company there internally. And then I got fired. So I got fired by the CEO quite weirdly. I got promoted and fired over 1 month. And then honestly, looking back at myself, and I'm not trying to lie to myself, there is no calling for it. I really wanted in the first few months to prove everyone that they were wrong and that they didn't mistake in firing me. I know it sounds like very stupid and low level. And I'm not saying that it drove me for years, but the reason why it sparked, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it now, not in 6 months, or I'm not going to change field or whatever, because I could have gone back to consulting or doing whatever. This was this, right? I was bruised. And I wanted to prove myself and to prove the world that I could build something. So it drove me for a few months, and then obviously you have a lot more other challenges than this one that start appearing. But yeah, that's the reason I got triggered. And then the beginning of Fetcher was very tough, very, very tough. 7 years, tons of white hair, and a lot of back in the days the ecosystem was not developed. It was very difficult to build large companies.
I just want to understand that situation a little bit more. Don't have to go into too much detail, but you founded a company or you joined a company?
I found.
You founded a company and then you exited in a bad way from the CEO. You were fired.
Oh no, sorry. The previous one, no, I joined the company. It was a Series B type of things. I joined as the COO to build the logistics network of an e-commerce company. And then I got fired, and this is where I decided to found Fetcher. And this whole thing happened in 6 months.
Wow. Let's talk about Fetcher then. So you founded that, you've got passion, you've got some drive, you're annoyed at the world or that person maybe. For people that aren't aware of both, yeah. For people who don't know Fetcher, what was it?
It was e-commerce logistics, very simple concepts, half the world doesn't have addresses. You go to India, Pakistan, here, you can see how much of a mess it is. But also all the markets in Africa. So half the world doesn't have addresses. And when you buy something online, you're still being asked about what's your address. It seems weird. It seems like a discrepancy. And this is, if you look at the growth of e-commerce, it's coming mostly from emerging markets. So we found that we thought that it was ill-fitted in that sense. And the same way as when you order Uber or Karim, they don't ask you for your address. They ask you for where you are. What matters is GPS. So it's how come Aramex, UPS, whoever, still ask you for where you're going to be in 6 days between 8 and 12, right? Where you have no clue. And Uber does it on demand and gets you a driver in 6 minutes, right? So obviously, I'm not saying it's that simple because you need to think about routing and having 26 packages in the car. So there is a lot of other issues. I get it, but this is where the conundrum, right? This is where it's not logical. So we instead of relying on address systems that are irrelevant, we're just relying on GPS. So you could receive your packages at the beach, for example. We did a commercial for that. It's just that. So one, it's much more fitted to emerging markets. But two, the unit economics become much better because now all of a sudden you're fully in control of the driver, which is a big concept because drivers know zones, and for them to rely on the GPS rather than their knowledge gets you. It's super difficult at the beginning, but gets you to the next level. Anyway, it was like a whole mind shift, change of paradigm a bit. So that was the idea, and we're serving only e-commerce companies.
And at what point in your journey did you have the experience of raising money for the first time?
Pretty early. My seed round was, my God. I was always raising, I raised from like 25 people, I think, to raise my first million, 1.2 million, if I remember. Yeah, 1.2 million at 4 million valuation, I think.
How hard was the first time?
Horrible. First time founder. How come you think you can disrupt the big guys? Like all logical questions. And it happens. So yeah, it was tough. But, there is always, had we known all the problems that you faced, you would never have started the company, right? Clearly, on Fetcher, I would not have started. I think there is, like, ignorance is a blitz a bit, like it's good to think, to not understand the full magnitude of problems you're gonna have. I think it's completely okay. That's why a lot of people actually, for example, in banking, don't build fintech, because they realize that, or they think that they're not gonna be able to disrupt the market. But going back to your questions about raising money, the first round was tough. The second round was horrible. We almost shut down the company. And then all the way to the third one was tough. We raised like 40 million. Yeah, so every round was tough because every time we were facing a little bit of the issues of being in the Middle East. So like first round, like super high dilution for early stage. Like what's the point of even building a business if you lose 50% of the bat? That kind of mentality. Then second round was like raising from Silicon Valley. Oh my God. Like super tough. Like they didn't know the GCC. They think like women could not drive in Dubai. I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, so, all that kind of like learning. And then the third one was like raising 40 million. Now, obviously we have all these mega rounds in the GCC, very different, but 15 years ago, 10 years ago, or whatever. Yeah, 14 years ago, there was Karim and us, right? It was very tough.
Yeah. So how much did you raise in total for Fetcher? And was it all VC or was there angels involved as well?
Angel at the first round, and then mostly VCs. Yeah, I would say 90%. Total, how much I raised? About $60, I think, $70, 70 million.
And what was the end result of the business?
Yeah, it was. So we got acquired basically by a consortium that took control over Fetcher, and then we parted ways basically. So that's how 7 years ended.
And what was harder, raising money for the business or dealing with due diligence to exit the business?
Not raising money.
Really?
Yeah. Because there is like so much work that needs to be done. Like every time we were talking to investors, it was the first time in the GCC. Like you need to sell. It feels like you're VRP of Dubai. Like it's crazy. Like you need to sell Dubai, sell the GCC all the time. You need to, you need to make sure that they have no doubts that they can put like 10, 20, 30, 100 million, right? The last term sheet that we had was like 120 million. So it's like big amounts. So you need to sell the region all the time. It was super tough. And then the business.
And I've heard about second time founder advantage where, rightly or wrongly, you will get into more rooms. You might have access to better VCs or angels. Have you felt that?
Yeah, wow, 200 times. Yeah. So not only you're better at organizing the information, transmitting the message, but then also you have access to different kind of, investors. You have like some of your past investors that if you didn't screw up too much, like they would like to reinvest and so on. So yeah, much better. And you don't do all these rookie mistakes. Not only during the negotiation process, but also term sheets and so on, right? Which, yeah, it's a huge advantage. That's why, honestly, if you're a first-time founder, you need to have call it a partner, whatever, like how they call it, advisor or whatever, but like have somebody guide you. And it doesn't mean like 6 hours a day, right? But it could be 2 hours a month. That's super critical.
And what happened after Fetcher? You then joined the company as a senior exec and went on the journey all over again?
No, so yeah, exactly. So I left Fetcher and then I joined this company. I was tired of being a CEO. I was burned out. So I'm like, one, I want to get out of Dubai because I'm like, I want to see a little bit the world. It was like 10 years in Dubai and everything was reminding me of Fetcher. So it was like very, it was just a bit tough. So, and I really didn't want to be a CEO. Didn't want to have that pressure of raising money all the time. So I joined this company. I love the founders. I love the C-level team, all smarter than me. That was really cool. I had more white hair. So they joined, they let me join. I joined as chief strategy and then I took over technology and then data. So quite a big, there was like 1,400 people. It was quite massive. But it was super fun. Yeah, so I moved to Barcelona. And then 1 week after I joined, I came in Barcelona, COVID hit. I'm like, oh my God. So I stayed in my place for like 6 months or so, and we could not even get out. But anyway, it was a very fun ride. And it was good not to be a CEO a bit. It's refreshing.
So at this point, you founded 2 companies, right?
Yeah.
And that's loads of risk, loads of autonomy. If you take the direction you want to. So then you joined a company as an executive. How tough was that? Or was it not tough?
Yeah, surprisingly, it was not the toughest. Because I think if you're running your startup or your scale up the right way, you give a lot of freedom to your C level so that they can blossom and create value. So I didn't feel like I was frustrated. Frustration only came a little bit like at the end, and this is where I was like, maybe like I would love to start again. And it was, it's funny because it was a problem as in we're talking, so like there is what we call in the army like disagree and commit, which I love these concepts, so there is time to disagree and there is time to commit. So you disagree, you can voice any concern, we talk about it, then we found a position. Once we found a position, you have to be able to set the position the same way, whether you agree or you disagree. You're on the same, which kills politics, kills all this stuff that is really like a cancer into like startups or companies. So disagree and commit, that's super cool. And they were actually pretty good at that. But the problem is that the topics keeps on coming back. And I'm like, oh my God, like what has changed? We talked about it like 2 months ago and now we're still gonna talk like for 6 hours, no, like 4 hours about something. And yeah, this pissed me off a bit. I was just like, okay, you need to be more, no, what changed since last time we talked? If nothing changed, the topic is closed. We're not talking about it. And you need somebody, who can do this. So yeah, that frustrated me. And then it's all about creating value. I felt like I was probably in a better spot. Like the company was big, we got acquired. I was like, what am I doing? We got acquired by Delivery Hero, right? Massive beast, right? So I love DH, like it's great. I really nothing bad to say. I don't want, if not only good things to say. But it's just like, yeah, it's a different game. I don't want to be, they have like 16 or 15 portfolio companies. Okay, yeah, I'm not interested in that. So I left.
And how did you talk to me about the transition from leaving that company to then starting another company?
Well, it's super easy in that sense. It was fun to be back into small teams. I love the 0 to 100 type of teams. It's really cool, like when you know everybody by name. Which is not the case after that. So yeah, it was really cool. And I founded this with Karim. Karim was with me at Fetcher and we were a good pair and we just, and we took a co-founder along the way, Mario. So yeah, it was very natural. Yeah, there was no, like this fear, like, it's okay, no, we'll try. And we got the first term sheet super fast, like pre-product, pre-everything. Like we had nothing, and we got a bit of money, and then it became real. We started building a team, and it was super fun.
What's the difference between starting a business on your own and starting with someone who is equally as good as you?
I'd say not so big a difference because quickly you need to gather people that are going to be smarter than you or at your level. So whether you actually start alone and then you bring somebody, at your level pretty quickly. Or whether you start with 2 is actually very similar. And that's why if you're a multiple-time entrepreneur, it makes sense to start alone and then because you capture a lot more of the shareholder value on your cap table. And then bring somebody that is, and even call him a co-founder, no problem, but a bit later on. But the cap table is not going to be the same as 50-50 at the beginning, right? So yeah, not that different.
So you've mentioned a couple of times about finding people that are better than you, hiring really good people and letting them do their thing. I'm sure you've built up a network of people that you maybe rely on and trust and can ask for referrals, but how on earth do you hire at scale? How do you find these really, really good people consistently and let them do what they do?
Early stage, I would say close to 100%. Later stage becomes a bit different. Right? That's the short answer. Early stage because you recruit on drive and how you get along and whether you mesh as a team. Like people you've been working with, so who you're gonna mesh with or not, and you understand their own personal level of drive and what they want to achieve. So I would say early stage it's almost like 90% from my network. And then later stage is a bit different because obviously you start hiring more for skills and so on. And like I don't know like 15 CFOs and over fintech companies, that could be a good candidate. So yes, that's how I think about it.
Do you think when scaling a business, finding the right people is one of the hardest things to make the success of the business from your experience of multiple businesses?
Yeah, finding is not easy. I would say post is probably even tougher because sometimes I found it easier to recruit like really good talents, but a bit more difficult to make sure that all these talents get along. So for me, this goes back to the role of a CEO, right? The CEO is only here for three things and three things only. One, making sure that the company doesn't run out of money, so raising money. Two, attracting talents. Okay, if you don't attract world-class talents, your company is going to be considered a regional company. And then three, making sure that none of your talents is blocked by anything. So this is obviously tougher, right? Processes, people, or product, the three Ps, right? And that's it, nothing else. So I would say that this is what you're going to be judged on. It doesn't mean that this is the only thing you should do, talking to customer and so on, but this is what you're going to be judged on. So I would say that making sure that all these talents work well together is a lot more difficult than recruiting the right talent.
Mm. And this business has been built to sell, again, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is nothing wrong with this. I think this is how you should think about a business. Otherwise, it's a lifestyle business, and VCs are now here to entertain your lifestyle.
I was talking to so many people, and everyone has the intention of selling the business, but I think many people maybe don't do the things that actually get a business sold in the beginning. They leave it till the end. But it sounds like you with your experience and the co-founders, you really know from day one how to structure the business and how to go about maximizing long-term potential.
Yeah, I would agree. And also, so I'm listening to what VCs say. If you actually ask them what's the main problem of like entrepreneurs is that they don't think about exits early on. It's always later stage and afterthoughts, which is a problem. Like, when you're getting, I'm not saying it's the whole truth, right? So you can build the business and not thinking about selling, but then don't get VC money. Like, there is a bit, when you get VC money, you're on the time clock and they're going to have to, pay back their shareholders in whatever within the life cycle of the funds, right? So it's anywhere between 7 years, 10 years maximum. So if they're 3 years, 4 years into the funds, you're going to have to think about exit. They're going to have to think about exiting in 3, 4 years from now. You have to be cognizant of that fact. It's the game. If you don't want that game, play another game. There's no problem with this either. But don't go into that game and not pretending that you want to run a business that is 15% growth per year, right? It's just not what they're interested in.
And you've raised money in Europe. You've also raised money in Dubai or the Middle East.
Yeah, and the US.
In the US. So 3 very different markets.
Yeah.
Just tell us the experience of the differences between the 3.
I found that, good question, right? I found that the herd mentality is higher in the US than what it is anywhere else. So who takes your leads? There's like 5-6 funds, right? Where they have like super high Series A to IPO ratio, they call it. So there is like the Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia, NEA, and so on of this word that are always going to be followed if there is. I found this to be not true in Europe and not true here. So I'm not saying, so if you got like Sequoia US that's backing your Dubai-based company, you're probably going to find money. But if you're being invested by the best funds in the region here, you're not going to have, let's say, Mubadala, for example, pretending. You're not going to have a herd effect. Everybody's going to flock to your deal. So very different valuations, very different. I mean, big time. Yeah, not even. It's like 1 to 4 differences in some, especially early stage. And then I would find that, I would say, like 10 years ago, the ecosystem was very poor here, especially for early stage companies, and it changed a lot. So I think like raising a small checks is a lot easier than what it was, like 10 years ago.
I'm very lucky to speak to a lot of angels and VCs, so I always try and get out of them what they look for in good investments and founders, and it's very helpful. But I like to ask the founders as well. You've obviously got second-time founder advantage, if you like. We'll call it that. But let's imagine someone's watching this, because there will be, who is a first-time founder. And there's no doubt they're probably feeling the effects of no after no after no. Do you have any advice for that person to make it a little bit better, and how can they increase their chances of getting money? So first, let's not think that we're in a completely different league, right? We're in the same league, okay? So even if you have second time founder advantage, which I agree, you're still gonna receive anywhere between 80 to 90% of no's.
So it's a fact. That's how it works. You have to be, you can be pissed off about it, but that's just what it is. So what matters, I always remember, like this Mike Tyson quote, that says, nobody you're gonna remember if you went on the floor. What matters is, whether you're still standing at the end, right? And it's super true. Like, it's okay. Nobody cares whether you got 60 no's or 70 or 80. It's the same. It's the same, right? So as long as you put your ego on the side and you keep on going, so I would say that one, let's not think we're in a different league. We get tons of no's, and I get more than 80% of no's now. So it's a fact. So that's one. Two, always remember that it's a numbers game, right? Do not put your eggs in, which means psychologically, do not put your eggs in one basket. Stop sequencing about, like a lot of entrepreneurs start sequencing like, oh, there is like 2 funds that I really love. And they go only with these 2 funds. And then they wait for like 3 months and then they get no's or they get ghosted. And then after 3-4 months, they realize that they're at the same level. And then you have less runway, you're more in trouble. So do not pick that. If you have multiple term sheets, this is when you're gonna solve that problem and you're in a good place. But yeah, don't sequence it. And then I would say try to find somebody who can do warm intros for you. Super critical. Whether it's an angel investor or an advisor or whatever, in whatever capacity, it's super important. You're gonna get more meetings. They get bombarded by emails. It's difficult to break through the clouds. If you come highly recommended by somebody that they trust, yeah, it matters. That's what I would say.
And you've started 3 companies, right? So It sounds like you've got ideas, or the ideas that you've followed through with have certainly had some success in their own right. But I know lots of people, through the feedback I get, they have ideas and they're maybe writing them down. They're maybe sharing them with friends, but they don't necessarily act on them or follow through. How can somebody validate their idea?
Yeah, so 2 things, right? One, I think that being patient and not necessarily jumping ship when you have a job and jumping on your startup, waiting is not necessarily stupid. Okay, trying to maximize, your odds of success by it's very tough. You're gonna have tons of pressure, right? As soon as you start quitting your job, you're gonna have pressure anyway. But if you start quitting your job, you might go to burnout, or you might go to stupid decisions, right? That you're leaving a job and in 3 months your company is going bankrupt, and then what? Was it a good decision, right? So this whole idea of being 200% in straight off the bat is not necessarily true, because at the beginning there is a lot of product market fit, and you need to see whether you have something. And during that period only, it's okay to have a job, because it's not necessarily a 12-hour a day work. So one, it's not necessarily stupid. Okay, makes sense. You can start like this, start seeing traction. As soon as you have a little bit of tractions or product market fit, then quit your job and just do it. And then you have obviously the problem of the entrepreneur, right? So the people who always gonna have, despite market traction, they're gonna start losing momentum because they're not dedicating to that. It's a different problem. It's very tough to know when you're in one versus the other. I think this comes with the experience, or whether you have some VC money, or somebody who can help you. But yeah, I would say, if that's the first time, don't be discouraged by no's, and keep going. There is no better investments than revenues. So get revenues. If you cannot get investments, get fucking revenues. And it matters. It matters.
So we've covered the 2 points there. So we've covered how to increase your chances, I guess, of getting investment. Yep. Also how to actually validate an idea, not just think about it. And you have a common problem I always hear, and people ask me, and I'm always asking, is finding a co-founder. It seems like statistically, I've read that the chances may be higher with a co-founder. Maybe that is skewed, maybe that is region specific, but I think from where I can see, it definitely gives you an advantage in some way. But how do people go about finding a co-founder?
Yeah. So 2 things, right? One, does it give you a real advantage? 2, how to find it? One, does it give you advantage? Statistics say so. Yeah, I agree. For first-time entrepreneurs, you have a higher chance of success if you have a co-founder for simple reasons. That one, you can have blind spots as a person. With 2 people, you reduce the blind spots of the company, less likely to do mistakes. And 2, it's not only about blind spots, but it's also about drive, right? If 2 people are driving the same train versus 1, you can have more power. So you can have, from a momentum, from a momentum standpoint, you're gonna maximize your chance of success. So yes, it does make sense. There is even some, I think Antler, one of these incubator, ask you you need to have a co-founder. If you don't have a co-founder, we'll find you one. So So yes, it does max. If they do this, it's because they've done this like thousands of times across like 3 continents. So they know a little bit what they're talking about. So yes, it maximizes your chance. And starting with 2 is less lonely. We haven't talked about loneliness. Loneliness is massive. So yes, that's correct. How to find one? So you need to find one, honestly, that is, the key thing is really like values, and it needs to, and I know it sounds cliche and so on, but you need to be completely okay spending 12 hours with that person a day. And it's so tough. It's so tough to find the right person. Not only you need to have, like different skill sets, hopefully one that is more salesy, the other one is more processes, or one that is technical, the other one that is more business. There's multiple ways to skin the cat. You don't need to cover all of the functionalities with co-founders. You can find them with later hire. But as you need a co-founder, try to values and drive trumps everything. Which means don't do these 2 mistakes. Don't recruit somebody that comes from the industry thinking, so let's say you want to disrupt banking, and then it's like, okay, I want to recruit somebody from Barclays because I'm not a banker myself. Big mistake. Like, don't do this only for that reason, right? You need to have the mesh. If you do this, like you're trying to cope with your own imposter syndrome, but it has nothing to do with the business. Okay, we all have to some extent some kind of imposter syndrome, but don't let it drive your decision, especially at co-founder level, because you're giving away a big chunk of your company and you're gonna pitch together. Don't do that mistake, and don't do that mistake to necessarily hire a co-founder. Like if I'm not technical, I need a technical co-founder. It's not the case.
And you've been on the journey which a lot of people maybe aspire to, or certainly build and exit businesses and become an entrepreneur and achieve those monetary successes. If you had to think back to your early days when you were first starting out, you've just come out of the special forces, and you had to give yourself some advice, some realistic advice, not the work hard and the simple things like, what would you tell yourself? Just do this, or don't do this.
Whether it's worth it now. Worth it is super difficult, right? Because it's about foregone opportunities, which are very tough to know, right? I would tend to think about this way. One, statistically, entrepreneurship is not a good career, right? We're all, but we tend to be attracted to fame, overnight success, and what we call overnight success, 10 years overnight success. And we tend to think that being entrepreneur is the only way to financial independence. When I hear entrepreneurs is like, why you want to do this? Because I want to be my own boss. I'm like you're so wrong. Like, I've never been that little a boss, as being a CEO. What does it mean being a boss? You cannot do everything you want. You have like stakeholders. You have like a lot of responsibilities. You have responsibility towards your board, your investors, the C-level team that join you in this crazy journey. They quit their job because they believed in you, right? Like, all this stuff is, and you thinking that you can do whatever you want because you're the CEO is a complete misrepresentation of what your job's going to be. Big red flag. So I would say statistically, it's not necessarily a good choice. So just do it if you really think that you're going to enjoy the journey and not the outcome. The outcome is super uncertain. So it cannot be your main driver. And then 2, would I do it again? Probably not. It brings a lot of like satisfactions and so on, but it also has so much toll. Like it takes its toll on your health, on your like family. Like and it's quite lonely, and it's super schizophrenic. For me, it's probably the toughest because you need to portray such an image of like success, and everybody you talk to can be your investor, your clients, or your next CTO. So you cannot really be completely transparent about all the challenges that are really going inside your head or with the company. Like it's difficult. So it's very lonely. And you see that across like multiple entrepreneurs. Yes, the highest suicide rate is like through entrepreneurs, like 6 times more than the average. It's tough, right? It's the reality. I would say be careful choosing this.
Well, that is great advice and wisdom, and a good way to end the podcast. I think there may even be a season 2 that we have to, or an episode 2, sorry, that we have to get in, because the loneliness and the challenges is a whole conversation in itself, and you've been through it. So, but for now, I really appreciate you coming on, and thanks for your time.
No, thank you. Thanks a lot.
And that's it. That's the end of the episode. I hope that you enjoyed watching it as much as I did recording it. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next Wednesday for next week's episode.